To look at a loan modification and determine whether or not it's actually going to be successful, you have to understand a little bit about the formula and how it works. It has very little to do with your other debt-to-income ratio. It has more to do specifically with your gross income and the formula that the bank uses. That formula essentially is this. Take your gross income, whatever it happens to be, and of course that's before tax income, take that times 0.31%, divide that number by 12, and that will probably tell you what your new mortgage payment will be, or a very close approximation. Now, if that new number is less than the current mortgage payment that you've got, you may be a good candidate for a modification, and it may actually fix your problem. But you have to know enough about your own personal finances to determine that. So as an example, I had a client recently come to me. He said he desperately needed a loan modification. This is a gentleman with a wife and 4 children. He says, I can't afford to make my mortgage payments. My mortgage payments are $1,500 a month. Todd, I desperately need your help to help me modify my loan. And I say, okay, great. So tell me, what is your gross income? He says, my wife earns about $25,000 a year. That's her gross income. My gross income is $40,000 a year. Okay, so let's take the formula. We've got $65,000 per year. We take that number times 0.31%. We divide that number by 12, and that turns out to be $1,680 or some odd close approximation to that. And I said, look, you're probably not going to get a loan modification. Now, I'm not going to tell you that you shouldn't try, because who knows, maybe you'll actually get one that's lower, but more than likely, if you use the bank formula, that tells you already your current mortgage payment is $1,500 a month. The new payment at 31% of gross income divided by 12 is $1,680 a month. Hey, if you're building your entire strategy around a loan modification fixing your problem, I would say that that's a flawed strategy. The next consideration must be, is it within the bank's capability to modify your loan to a point that it'll actually fix your problem, or specifically to your 31% of gross income. So let's say that you've got a very high mortgage payment, maybe $3,000, $4,000, $5,000, and your new income, maybe income got cut in half, maybe got a new job, is so substantially lower, we have to determine if we take that new income times that 0.31%. By the way, banks internally may be using a little bit different formula than that. That's the government program. They don't all necessarily comply with the government program, but at least this is a close approximation. So you look at what the bank has the capability to do. We know that by going to the federal government's website, it says that they can modify, or at least are encouraged to modify loans to as low as 2% to accomplish your objective. All right. So if I've got a mortgage that is $200,000 and that mortgage is currently at a 6% interest rate, taxes, insurance, everything included. So PITI, principal, interest, taxes, and insurance. We look at the number that your mortgage payment currently is. Then we take the number of 6%, and we know that each point of interest represents 1% of the principal balance of your loan. Your loan is $200,000, so 1% of that loan is $2,000 divided by 12, which is approximately $133 per month difference per point. You simply decrease that, or take that $2,000, 1% of the principal balance, take that number times the decrease in interest rate. In this case, it would go from 6% to 2%, which would be 4 points. That's $8,000. We divide that number, that $8,000, by 12, makes a change of $666 more per month. If my current payment is $300,000 mortgage, my payment is $2,500 a month, I simply take $666 a month against the current mortgage payment, principal, interest, taxes, and insurance. Will that new mortgage payment fix my problem? And is that within their capability, the bank, to modify the loan, even if they go all the way to 2%, to get that mortgage payment down below my 31% of gross income? The other thing to keep in mind that is also important is they could amortize your payment out to 40 or 50 years. They could balloon some of it at the back end of the loan. There's many other tools, but basically you have to know that you're within the realm of capability of getting it done, and you're kind of in the sweet spot, which is, by the way, why 90% of the people applying for loan modifications are not getting them, because they simply don't understand the formula. If they did, they would recognize that the chances that they're going to get a loan modification are probably slim and none. And if their entire strategy is built around the fact that the loan modification is going to fix their problem, again, I'll say that's a flawed strategy. Nothing wrong with giving it a shot, but at the end of the day, if it has a very small chance of success, we better have a backup plan or a contingency plan if it doesn't work, because the reality is you may have to exercise that backup contingency plan. So obviously a lot of people who are applying for loan modifications probably are not going to get them. But here's the other interesting fact. Of the people who do get the loan modifications, the permanent loan modifications, do you know that the vast majority of those people will wind up right back in foreclosure again anyway? Why is this? Because quite honestly, they don't have a money management system to ensure that they're out of that position. The reality for most people is that they don't manage money well. They never have. To most people, doing a budget is simply figuring out how many bills you have that come in the course of the month, factoring out how many pay periods you have between now and the end of the month, and when the end of the month comes, surprise, surprise, at the beginning of the month you thought you'd be able to have the money to pay all the bills, and the end of the month comes and you're shocked, thinking somebody must have stole the money out of your checking account because you don't have the money to pay the bills. Of course, when you did the bills at the beginning of the month, you did factor in heat and gas and electricity and food, but you didn't factor in Christmas, birthdays, anniversaries, Mother's Day, Father's Day, and all the other things that people do spend money on. Things that they tell themselves that they won't, but in fact actually do, and surprise, surprise, they're right back in the same situation. Interesting statistic. Of the people who file bankruptcy, 70% of those people will wind up in bankruptcy again. Why is that? Because fundamentally, nothing changes in the way they manage their money, and they're right back there again. So, you need a money management system, or at least you need a comprehensive budget to make these decisions and discern whether or not, number one, a loan modification is going to fix your problem. You have to have the bank formula to figure out what they actually can do. And of course, then when and if you do get the loan modification, you have to determine whether or not you're going to sign on the dotted line and accept it because you want to fundamentally fix your problem. So look, how tough could a budget be? I mean, frankly, can any idiot with a calculator do a budget? I mean, how tough could it be? There's free budgets out there everywhere. Why in God's name would anybody pay for a budget? Well, let me tell you what. In 2010 alone, and I do keep track, I did comprehensive money management, budgeting, for 38 CPAs in 2010. These are people who are very good at calculating things after they've already happened. Accounting is to account for things or to be accountable. The fact is, accounting for something that has already happened does you virtually no good in a budget, because if you overspend the next month, the only thing you can say is, I'll try to do better the following month. Of course, you won't know until that month is over either. So the fact is, it's not to insinuate that people like CPAs and financial advisors aren't good at managing their money. It is that nobody really gives it the attention that it needs. And fundamentally managing money properly is not a simple thing to do. It's tough. It really is tough. So you have to look at what are the problems and where do things go wrong in terms of money management. Number one, people don't fully appreciate what they're really spending. They like to put numbers on a spreadsheet that they wish they were only spending. In fact, when it comes to doing a budget, you have to know what you're actually taking away. So when people will say to me, well, look, Todd, we're just going to have to tighten our belt. We're going to have to watch our money. And I say, you know what? Stop wasting my time with such nonsense and tell me instead which one of your kids isn't going to get a birthday party. Tell me about the fact that you're not going to be taking a trip. Tell me about the fact that you can't afford to be a two-car family anymore. Now the tears begin, and now we get real serious. So when we're talking about money management, a comprehensive budget is to take into account everything. When a guy comes into my office and I say, so tell me, how much do you think you and your family, your wife and two kids are spending on gifts and special occasions? He says, well, I don't know, 25, 50 bucks a month. And I say, really? So how much are you going to spend on each one of your kids for the holiday season? Oh, I don't know, $200-300 bucks. Well, which one is it, 200 or 300? Well, iPods, laptop computers, probably at least 300 bucks. Is that total for both kids, or is that each? Oh, no, that's probably each. Okay, you going to spend any money on your spouse? Not very much. How much? I don't know. 100 bucks? She going to do the same thing for you? Yep. Do you exchange gifts with your siblings? Do you buy things for your parents at the holiday season? Do you spend more money on food, beer, wine over the holiday season? Do you send out cards or photographs over that time? Do you have a Christmas tree? Do you buy a real one? Do you have an artificial one? Do you buy wreaths and garland from the Boy Scouts? Oh my God, that occasion alone is $2,000, and people just got done telling me that they're only spending $25, $50 a month, and we haven't gotten into New Year's, Easter, Halloween, Mother's Day, Father's Day, 4th of July. None of that was even in there yet. The average American family of four is spending $3,000 to $5,000 per year on gifts and special occasions, and nowhere do you find it in their budget. So when they put the numbers in the spreadsheet that they wish they were only spending, those numbers are delusional. When they look at what constitutes their real budget, they have their head in their hands and they say, my goodness, no wonder we don't have any money. And when they tell me they'll do anything to keep their house, now for the first time in their lives, they're actually looking at where they're spending their money and realizing that the very things that they may think make life worthwhile are the very things they're going to have to give up to keep that house. Now we're getting serious, and now we're talking about a real budget. The next portion that we have to concern ourselves with is controlled spending throughout the course of the month. As I've said, factoring things at the end of the month, balancing the checkbook, or locking yourself away in a spare bedroom to figure out how much you spent after you've already spent it is like closing the barn door after the horse has already left the barn. Little bit late to be doing that. You need to know that if you have allocated $600 for groceries for your family, you need to know not at the end of the month that you spent $750 when it's a little bit late to be taking the groceries back, but instead you need to know that in the third week of that month, you have so far spent $432.27, and before you walk into the grocery store, you know precisely what you have so that you don't overspend the last week of the month. If you have a system like that enables you to fully appreciate what you're spending from the onset and then manage controlled spending throughout the entire month without having to balance your checkbook 16 times a day, then you will fundamentally change the way you manage money.